Welcome to the Triad Psych YouTube channel. We have a very special guest today, a wonderful person, a wonderful professional in the neurodiversity field as well. We have Jodi Carlton, who really is a big pioneer looking at neurodiverse relationships, especially in the modern age. We've seen some distance between the early pioneers talking about neurodiverse relationships, and then we have the now. And as I've made clear in these recordings, that things have never been better for neurodiversity. I'm aware, and Jodi and I were just discussing it, that we are seeing a backlash right now against neurodiverse people, accommodations and the such, we can talk about as well, maybe not in this video, but in another one. But today we want to talk about Cassandra Syndrome, which is actually a pop psychology term. It is not a diagnosis. I want to make that clear, where someone is married to or in a relationship with someone who's neurodiverse. Usually the neurodiverse person is a man, and the person who's unhappy, calling this, is usually a woman. So Jodi, introduce yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for asking me to be here, David. You know, I respect you so much as a colleague and as a friend, and I appreciate the opportunity to share and educate more. But yeah, so I'm Jodi Carlton, and I have been working in the field of neurodiversity for well over 20 years. My daughter, who's 22 at this time, is autistic. She was diagnosed when she was 5, and so that's part of where my training ground comes from. But through the years, we've realized that my 19-year-old son is also ADHD. We realized I'm ADHD. We've realized that my mom is autistic, and my grandmother was autistic, and my children's father is autistic as well. So I have had my training for neurodiversity has been on the front lines in that regard. And I'm a huge advocate for neurodivergent individuals and people in adult relationships. So I have been advocating and doing my own videos and blogging and everything about that for years. So this is a very important topic for me.
Yes, it is. And you've done such wonderful things for the field.
Thank you.
I'm very grateful to be a part. We have a neurodiverse peer consultation group, which I get a lot out of. I get a tremendous amount out of it.
Yeah.
So on that note, what we're going to talk about again today is Cassandra Syndrome. And I'm going to go ahead, as I told you, and plant a flag. Very proud of this because I feel there's something that desperately needs to be said about this.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm going to go ahead, and I'm just going to say it, is that in my couples work, being the coach who is the neurodiversity coach, helping the neurodivergent individual, in every case they've been a man with a spouse, a female, who is upset about the neurodivergence, the lack of connection, they claim, certain behaviors they find to be displeasing, and trying to help them. And what I'm finding, and I know what I'm about to say is controversial, and some people out in YouTube land won't like this, is unfortunately I'm finding that what we were told about Cassandra Syndrome, which is not, again, there is no research on it. This is something which exists in the web. It was authored by a woman who was formerly married to someone who's neurodivergent, is that I'm finding that the neurodivergent partner isn't the one with all the issues at all. That the neurodivergence is often being used as an avenue for domination, intimidation, and even abuse. So Jodi, you're the queen in this space. So why don't you, I'd like you to weigh in first, now that I've gone ahead and put my neck out there.
Yeah, I'm going to stick my neck out there right there with you, David. I have struggled with, Maxine Aston was the original person who coined this phrase.
What was her name, Maxine what?
Maxine Aston. She's in the UK. And I've struggled with this concept for a long time. And the reality is, I see the same dynamic that you just described, where the autistic male, the husband or the male partner, is being labeled as the problem, and the autism itself is being weaponized by a wife who's actually either a toxic personality or someone who's experienced a lot of trauma, and it's unresolved and it's unhealed, and it's being, all of those issues are being projected into the relationship. Now, that said, I also want to just clarify that, because I can just feel the whiplash from the internet and hearing us say this out loud.
That's what I meant to say. Yeah, the internet's coming for us.
Yeah, they will. They'll come for us. I do want to say that for women and men, but let's talk about the couple that you mentioned, the female neurotypical or non-autistic and the male autistic. It is very confusing and it is very bewildering and upsetting to be married to someone who's autistic, especially if you don't know about it and you don't understand the communication differences. And the term Cassandra was, I believe Maxine Aston took that from a Greek myth where Cassandra, the Greek goddess, I think, I'm not a mythology person, could predict the future or see the future, and no one believed her. So
I'm sorry, that's right. Thank you. Right. The term, it was a mythical figure, and I should have started with that. Who, was a truth teller who was ignored.
Yes.
That's
so
right. That's a very good point. Yeah.
I think the key that Maxine was focusing on was the being ignored part, that other people in a woman's world weren't recognizing or believing this experience, this bewildering experience, because they're seeing this autistic partner as a really nice guy, really genuine, very, very, just nice guy. And so it's the not being believed part that I think was what Cassandra was originally meant to describe. And I think that's a real thing, but I think it also works both ways. I think autistic individuals are not believed for what they're living and what they're experiencing and their sensory demands and executive dysfunctions, all the invisible things that contribute to neurodiversity. So it's not that, I think that's where the whole concept of Cassandra syndrome went wrong, is that it identifies the neurotypical wife as the victim in this situation. And so many people who are identifying with this victim mindset, being victimized by an autistic partner, when in reality, an autistic partner is victimized in a way by the whole world, and also a partner. And so I think that a lot of women who are struggling with this kind of grab onto that I'm a victim of this label, and it becomes extremely dysfunctional and harmful for everybody.
It absolutely does. And we have to be truth tellers here. The way I was trained, and I guess I'm rapidly on my way to becoming a dinosaur at my age, but was that you don't hop on trends, you study them. And the mental health field has been loaded with trends, and some are good, some are bad. Mm-hmm. And for me too, I know, like we talked about the backlash from the internet, I'm one of the first clinicians in my trainings to make it clear that yes, someone can be neurodiverse, but also have a personality disorder.
Me too. You and I are both right there in that leading group of people identifying that. Yep.
Right. And I had to make it clear in my training to law enforcement, because what was happening was the police weren't trained well, and they were thrown off the trail when someone said, well, no, they couldn't be dangerous because they're on the spectrum. Yes, they can.
Yes.
It just recently came out that the Columbine kids were both neurodiverse. That was covered up. Now, there's a long history to that we're not going to get into here, related to the something called the schizophrenic mother, the refrigerator mother. But again, we have to now call BS that we are seeing a lot of partners. I'm mostly seeing it from women who are very domineering and controlling, and having a partner who's very conflict avoidant, who gets sensory overwhelmed very easily, will capitulate quickly to stop the harsh sensory inputs, is serving a need for them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's with all of my cases, is what I'm saying. You and I we collaborated on a case where that was very much the case.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, I see that quite a bit, where an autistic partner, a male partner, is quite invested in understanding himself, learning about himself, but also is experiencing a lot of times a lot of guilt and a lot of shame that's in a lot of ways been very much heaped on him by his female partner or wife. And the partner, oftentimes the woman oftentimes drops that partner off to coaching with me. They kind of come and drop them off and say, okay, he's autistic, fix it.
Yeah,
Fix
drop
him.
them off to be fixed.
Right.
But what happens when you start unpeeling the onion like I do, Jodi?
Well, what happens is I say, wait, hold on, there's two people in this relationship. I need to talk to you both. And that wife oftentimes is like, well, okay. And her perspective is usually to inform me, to let me know all the things that he's doing that are hurtful to her. And then a few different things can happen. One is I will say, okay, I hear this. I hear you. What kind of things are you doing to contribute to it as well? And usually one of two things happens. One, there's outrage. There's defensiveness of, wait, no, this is not me. Or two, you have a partner who isn't a personality disorder, isn't toxic, but is depleted and exhausted from doing so much work and investing so much time into themselves and their own healing and maybe even years of counseling. And then here's another therapist. Many therapists before me have not understood neurodiversity. And that woman has seemed like the dysregulated, mentally ill person. And they've been targeted as some depressed, or I even in counseling with my ex-husband, I had a therapist tell me I was depressed, and I most definitely was not. It was just wrong. So they'll either get really defensive and become their personality disorder, in which case they'll discredit me. And usually about the third session, they'll quit. Sometimes they'll make their partner quit. Or there's this panic. I see more of a trauma response where they look panicked when I ask them, what are you doing to contribute to this? Mm-hmm. Because it's like, oh no, here we go again. This person's going to blame me. And so I have to work through helping her to feel safe so that we can talk through it. And then those women usually are able to eventually participate as long as I find I provide a safe space for them. But the ones who are really wanting to just latch on to the Cassandra Syndrome victim mindset will discredit me and not want to work with me very quickly.
Right. Now, let me hop in that. Sorry, I get some coffee. But the issue is that, as I'm a neurodivergent male, that we follow orders very well for the most part. If things are explained to us concretely, there's nothing we can't do. Mm-hmm. And so, for me, my type of psychotherapy, coaching, whatever you want to call it, has always been based on skills acquisition, because I'm also trained as a special ed teacher. Mm-hmm. So what skills do we need to solve this problem? Therapists will often talk about things, but if they can't move the client forward, there's a skills deficit. How do I give them the skills to move forward? So in the work, I give them the skills, mm-hmm. and they do it. They tend to do it quite well. But then what I'm finding is it's often, it's still never good enough. It still mm-hmm. doesn't work. It's still, they have a problem. And then the danger zone for me is that when I say to usually the man, I say, look, you've done everything that's been asked of you. You're doing it well. It's time to push back. It's time to say, no, I will not be treated this way. I'm doing what you want. And unfortunately, that's when the coaching or therapy ends. Mm-hmm. That there is a blow up from the partner if the burden is put on them, or if there's pushback. And that could very much be the end. And ironic, or maybe it's not ironic, but the way it usually happens is I get a phone call with the partner is in the room and the person telling me, we have to stop this now. It's not working. Mm-hmm. The problem is it is working. That no matter what kind of therapy coaching you're doing, you have to remember about life, that there's no better way to make enemies than to make progress. And that came out of family therapy. That came out of Murray Bowen. Mm-hmm. And then a guy named Ed Friedman wrote a book, Generation to Generation, where he emphasized that too. And that, you would see in working with families, for example, usually a kid is the identified patient. And then when you start making progress with the family, someone in the family comes to assassinate you. Mm-hmm. Because, a lot of people are vested in keeping problems in existence. That's just life. And that's what we're seeing here with this whole Cassandra case. And like Jodi said, that it was invented by this woman in England, coined it. and what a term, Cassandra. Because, I'm a truth teller who's not listened to. Just the connotation. Right there. But now we have a new generation of us, the clinicians we have in our group, who are beginning to say, hold on, the evidence is showing something different here.
Yeah, the evidence, and then just our experiences with couples. And, we have to remember that all couples, every neurodiverse couple and every partner in a neurodiverse couple is bringing their own set of everything. I've got this backpack analogy that you may have heard me talk about, where I say you're issued a little backpack when you're born, and it's got everything in it that makes you who you are at any given moment in time. So it's got your DNA and your genetics, but then your life experiences and everything you've learned is in there, your fears, your everything. And so it's not just neurodiversity that's impacting these relationships. And there's also all the other stuff that every other couple that's not neurodiverse brings to it as well. And so sometimes there's social learning, there's family of origin stuff, there's codependency, there's all sorts of things that are brought into these relationships. But Cassandra syndrome has given, like, what I feel is a license to neurotypical women to basically blame the autism, that this is the problem. And I think it's very destructive overall, because it doesn't address all the other things that are also contributing to the problem.
I think what you're saying is key, that for some reason people like to look at things in isolation, and it's just not realistic.
No.
Nothing exists in isolation.
Right. And I have actually said many times that, for example, the groups, Facebook groups, and women are on Reddit as much as men, I don't think, but the Facebook groups that are Cassandra groups, I really discourage my clients and the people that are in my Facebook group, which is both neurodivergent and neurotypical, men and women. It's everybody, all neurotypes are in there. I discourage them from joining these Cassandra Facebook groups, because it is nothing but negativity, bashing, and it's just over and over and over again, and it's so destructive. And I've had healthy women join those groups, healthy women that are not looking for that blame, that place to blame, go into those groups and say, oh, this feels uncomfortable. They're not describing my husband. My husband is autistic, but they're not describing my relationship. And so I think that, I just think that the whole concept of Cassandra syndrome is very disempowering.
I agree. Now that I'm knee deep in it, it's exactly what I'm seeing. And I wrote a blog post, if you're interested in reading it, called Cassandra Syndrome Requires a Critical Eye. And this interview with Jodi is an extension of that. And I'm going to keep expanding on it too, because I feel so strongly about it. I mean, I'm not denying that dealing with someone who's neurodivergent can be difficult.
Yeah.
You don't want to use deficit model thinking, where all you look at is what's wrong with a person. You have to look at what's right with them too. And that seems to be an issue as well.
And also just your expectations going into a relationship about all those shoulds, those, what a relationship is supposed to be, what a husband's supposed to be, what a wife is supposed to be, all those shoulds, and where they come from, and do they really make sense? And can you have a very loving, healthy relationship that don't look like all those shoulds?
Right.
And sometimes the problem is not the autistic person, the neurodivergent person. It's not the neurodiversity in a relationship. It's all the shoulds and expectations that can't be met. And then the meaning that we're taught to take from them. If your husband doesn't this, then he doesn't love you. Or if your husband did love you, he would this. And I mean, Hollywood perpetuates it. Religion perpetuates it. Society perpetuates it. And I really encourage people to stop and check in with yourself about, what do you really actually need to feel safe and loved in your relationship? And are all these shoulds, these things that you're being told, are they relevant even?
Well, I think, speaking globally, is that whenever we're working with someone who lives for their shoulds, and we all have a right to have some shoulds.
Yeah.
But are they making sense anymore? Are they working for you? Yes or no? That's a big part of psychotherapy. Examining the shoulds, which you can also call scripts. That
Yes.
that Neo-Freudian, who was brilliant, wrote Games People Play. He called them scripts. His name, Eric Byrne, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Coming to me, he wrote Games People Play. And some people call them scripts. A lot of my patients call them tapes. I got these tapes in my head I can't get rid of. And, do they make sense or not? We all have them. But I think what's critical, no matter whether we're dealing with neurodiversity, whatever we're dealing with, is, are these shoulds or are these tapes, are these scripts really working for you anymore? And, it seems simple. I'm going to give you this insight. No, it's not working, but they're very hard to give up. They are very hard for people to shake them loose. I do a lot of work with social class, people who came from blue collar backgrounds and are living in a white collar world. And the shoulds in their head are very, very strong, very strong as well. So I think we can agree that shoulds, without being examined, aren't good. I mean, some shoulds are excellent. Do not lie, do not steal.
Right.
Other people how you want to be treated.
Right.
Those are good shoulds. They're good. But we have to look at some of the ones that may not be working or making sense either. And how else have you seen that play out in your work with couples, Jodi?
Well, I see couples thinking that a marriage and family is supposed to look like this, and they've got like this actual version in their head, and oftentimes it comes from all sorts of different places. Sometimes that narrative comes from what I don't want, like maybe a family of origin situation that you definitely don't want. That you want the opposite of that. So all of these are there, but what happens is it's impeding people from looking at, okay, what do I actually have? Who am I? Who are you? And how can we do life so that you are thriving, I'm thriving, and let's throw all this should out the window. So for example, a loving couple sleeps in the same room together every night. A loving couple doesn't spend the night alone. A loving couple does everything together. They go on vacations together. That this is what love looks like. A loving couple sits and has, long philosophical conversations. A loving couple, a loving partner knows me so well that they can anticipate what I want for Christmas, or, what makes me happy without me actually telling them. And if I tell them, it doesn't count. There's all these myths, I think, that show up in these relationships that are just absolutely blocking these couples from having a great relationship. And so I work with people and say, look, if sleeping in the same room is causing one or both of you to literally not get enough rest every night, so that your body is now in a state of fight or flight and alarm and nervous system activation because you're sleep deprived and you're chronically sleep deprived, then how in the world are you going to have this connected relationship? Because your body's in survival mode. You can't function that way. So don't share bedrooms. Go sleep in another room. You can have conjugal visits. You can have sex. You can do all that, but you don't have to sleep in the same room. I have couples that don't sleep on the same floor. They don't sleep in the same house. I was working with a couple recently that had figured out that, they worked really well by having and of course they could afford it. Not everybody can, but they had a great relationship, and they're not even living in the same home anymore. And they get together, they go on trips, they don't have children, they're older, so that they're retired. So it's just really a matter of looking at what stage of life are we in, what really works. And some people say, well, if we have young kids, we don't want them to see us not sleeping in the same room. And I'm like, why? Well, because then they'll think we don't love each other. And I'm like, they'll only think that if you don't explain to them why you're doing this.
Right. Yeah.
If you say, hey, dad snores and I can't get any sleep, so we're going to sleep in the same room, but that makes me not as grumpy with dad in the morning. And then you show them affection, and they don't think you don't love each other.
No, absolutely. And, I always talk about downloading the right software. That, big complaint as well. He isn't intuitive enough. So then, but intuition can be taught. And when if it doesn't come naturally for somebody, and then they learn it more deliberately, they tend to be much better at it than for someone who could pick it up more naturally. So again, this is all about skills acquisition and skills development for me. And, with the right couple, with the right people, we can get a lot done. These gaps can be closed. And, and it's, paying for coaching is cheaper than a divorce. Trust me.
Yeah,
Believe
that's
me,
true.
as someone
Well,
who's been through it, we both have.
I want to just respond to what you said about intuition, because intuition is nothing more than our body and our brain's database that has accumulated information over the course of time, and then our body's responding to what the environment and input and information, and sometimes it's subconscious, it's intuitive, it's we can't even put our finger on it. And autistic individuals especially are, and even ADHD, are highly skilled in pattern recognition, like highly. This was a superpower. But what they need, like you said, is the software. And so if someone who's autistic can be taught, given the data of what I like, what I love, what I don't like, what I don't love, and it does require receptivity to it. It requires safety in the relationship, safe to have these conversations without criticism and judgment. And if that safety's there and we can talk about it safely, and I can teach you, as I'm a neurotypical wife, I can teach you what I love, then an autistic husband can get really good at predicting
Right,
what
exactly.
you're going to love and what you're not going to love.
I think for me, I mean, what saved me was, like you said, was pattern recognition, learning pattern recognition, how to work with it, how to leverage it. And I do it a little too well now, maybe. Some people, it can be a little scary. I mean, Jodi's seen me in action. It can be a little scary for some people. Well, you're doing it because of this. And I blurted out.
Oh, David, it is definitely a super skill of yours. I can remember a group that we were doing with our peer group, and you just like blurted out, you spotted something so fast.
Oh, I did?
Yeah, you did. And I was like, not quite there yet. I have a really good pattern recognition too, but I wasn't there yet. I was still kind of going my ADHD like tree, I go branching tree. I was still going on down all the branches, and you just zoomed right past me. And I'm like, wait, hold on. It's too soon to make that assumption. And then the more we talked as a group of providers and clinicians, it came down to, you were absolutely spot on. And you were just like way ahead of everybody else. And you got what you picked up on that I hadn't gotten to yet. I don't know what it was, but you have excellent pattern recognition. And I can see how it would be off-putting. Oh, no, I can see how it would be very off-putting to people, because you arrive at a conclusion sometimes and they're like, what? And I experience that too with my clients, because sometimes I get there and they're like, how could you even know that when you've only met with us for an hour? And I'm like, well, it's so clear. It's like a neon sign flashing in my face. But I know we're kind of getting off topic.
If I can't be off-putting, I got nothing else left to put. So but it's good to know. I mean, all the struggles I had learning growing up and the messages I got about how I'd be worthless when I get older. It's nice to hear that. So thank you.
Well, see, and there you go, right there. Here you are, a neurodivergent man who has been told these messages. And that's exactly what I'm talking about when women come to me with, say that they're experiencing Cassandra Syndrome. What they're really experiencing is that bewilderment, and they're experiencing what it's like to not be heard, not to be understood, not to be believed. And yet their autistic partner has been living this, not just in this one relationship, but their whole life.
I mean, we're feeling a time pinch, but I think it's important to bring up that someone's neurodivergence can get worse over time, or it can get better.
Yes.
That at one point I had a large contingent of females I was treating who came to me because I specialize in neurodivergence. At the time we called it high functioning autism.
Yeah.
And all of them, and I'm not exaggerating, each and every one of them, their husbands worked for IBM. And they said everything was fine until IBM let them work from home. That when IBM said you can work from home, using this new thing called the internet, it got much worse, because what happened was, it was all men, that they weren't forced to go socialize every day. There was not a reason to get dressed and shave and even interact with people in a meaningful, and it was all done through these instant messaging and such. So it's important, and we're now moving again more towards work from home, remote. So I saw another surge, but after COVID, but it looked very different.
Yeah.
So I just want to throw that in there as well. This was an amazing talk. We will do it again. But, we're ready for the whiplash from the internet. And,
let's bring it on.
Bring it on. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah.
This is what we see, and we're sticking to it. So thank you, Jodi. I'm going to go ahead and we'll stop the recording. 1 second.
Thanks for having me, David.
Anytime. It's always a pleasure.